And now that we've got all the bullshit out of the way, folks, we can get down to what really happened on November the 22nd, 1963. On that date, I was the charge of quarters for the field maintenance squadron of the 4245th Bomb Wing of the Strategic Air Command. We had B-52 bombers, Minuteman missiles assigned to our unit, and KC-135 refueling tankers. I had the duty as charge of quarters for that week. That's the person who's in charge of the barracks orderlies to make sure that the lawn is mowed and the barracks are cleaned and the telephone is answered, and if somebody has an emergency, you take care of getting them an emergency leave and pushing them on the bus and off to wherever they've got to go. It was a slow day. It was just a little bit after noon. Wichita Falls, Texas is about a 2-hour drive from Dallas. A lot of the people on the base, a lot of the people in the town of Wichita Falls had actually gone to Dallas to witness the motorcade. I was sitting at the desk in the orderly room with my feet on the desk, watching the motorcade in Dallas on television. I witnessed the assassination with my own eyes, although I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know what was happening. It was very confusing. It was not the Zapruder film that I was seeing. It was a cameraman live on site. I don't even remember where he was standing in relation to the motorcade. But I remember the confusion of that day. I remember knowing something of tremendous import had happened, and then all of a sudden I realized that the president had just been shot. I picked up the phone and called the command center as waves of emotion began to ripple through my chest, and big tears, unexplainable, began to come out of my eyes and roll down my face. I told the officer of the day when he answered the telephone that the president had just been shot in Dallas. There was silence on the line. I could tell that he didn't quite believe what I was saying to him. I then identified myself as the charge of quarters for the field maintenance squadron, and he asked me how I knew. I told him that I had just witnessed it on live television from Dallas, and he hung up the phone. Within a very few minutes, the phone rang again, and I was told to roust everybody out of the barracks, that we were going to a red alert status in case the president had been assassinated by a foreign power. We stayed on red alert status for 3 days and 3 nights, and I literally slept beneath the belly of a B-52, which was loaded with atomic or hydrogen bombs. I never knew exactly which, but I knew that they made the biggest bang in the history of the world, if and when they were ever dropped. It was a fearful time. It was a time when the political will of the American people was shattered. Most of my generation, who lived through the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, have never recovered from the emotional trauma to this very day. And that may have been the reason, ultimately, or part of the reason for the assassination, to destroy the political will of the people, to let them know that their vote didn't count if whoever they voted for could be so easily dispatched and the deed covered up. Well, I left the Air Force with an honorable discharge, went into the United States Navy, volunteered for submarines, served on submarines, eventually was chosen and trained for the Office of Naval Intelligence. I was, by that time, a second-class petty officer with the rating of quartermaster, which is a specialty of navigating ships, charts, using a sextant, satellite navigation, Omega, all of those wonderful things that I used to play with. But I was specifically trained for the Office of Naval Intelligence in the area of Pacific Area Intelligence briefings. That is clearly written in my service record. At one point, I was attached to the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet as a member of the briefing team for the Admiral. I was also the petty officer of the watch when I stood watch in the command center, which meant that I was the senior enlisted man on duty in the command center. I was the designated SPCAT operator, which is special category top secret messages that come over the crypto machine. I was the only one authorized to touch those messages and to deliver them to the officer of the deck for routing. I got to see an awful lot of things that the American public has never known about and most probably never will know anything about. I learned while I was at that duty station that the world that I always thought existed was in reality a great fantasy woven out of sheer cloth, whole cloth, if you will, and that the public is seldom, if ever, told the truth about anything. I also realized during that period of time that I was in the Office of Naval Intelligence by accident, or when filling out my questionnaire for security clearance, I had checked that I was a Freemason because I had been a member of the Malay Society as a boy. I had attended three meetings of the Malay Society, which is the teenage boy version of Freemasonry. But Malay was not on the list, and you had to check every organization that you'd ever belonged to in your whole life. And if they found that you had left one off, that could affect your ability to receive a security clearance. So knowing that Malay was not listed, but it was a branch of Freemasonry, I checked Freemasonry and found out later that all of my fellow members of the Office of Naval Intelligence were Freemasons, Knights of Malta, Knights Templar, or the Order of the Rose and Cross. Without exception, ladies and gentlemen, there was no one who was not a member of these four organizations. During that time, I had access to an awful lot of top secret, special categorized information. Now, compartmentalization is a method of making sure that only those who have a clearance to see certain information is authorized to see it. In my position as a member of the intelligence briefing team, I had the need to see an awful lot of information that I would never have had the authorization nor the need to see, except in this instance, we had to put together briefings for the Admiral and his staff and other high-ranking military and civilian members of government who would attend these briefings every morning between 8 and 9 o'clock in the secure briefing room of the command center. Now, ladies and gentlemen, during this period of time, I saw some documents that stated emphatically that the Office of Naval Intelligence had participated in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and that the headshot had been rendered by the driver of the limousine, a man by the name of William Greer, a Secret Service agent, using an assassination pistol manufactured by the Central Intelligence Agency, which fired an exploding pellet containing a toxic poison. In this instance, it was stated that the poison used shellfish toxin. And these documents also stated that that was the reason that President Kennedy's brain had been removed from his body and destroyed, so that all traces of the shellfish toxin would be obliterated, would disappear, if you will. Now, this shattered my life, and I left with the intention of never coming back. I did come back after 8 days of being AWOL, after my good friend Bob Swan told me that someday I might have to tell the world what I saw. And so I went back and turned myself in and received a pat on the wrist, because after all, I was one of the Navy's finest. I'd been a patrol boat captain in Vietnam. I was decorated for valor under fire. And I got a slap on the wrist. That was it. Went back to my duties. I saw in those documents also that the act was clearly visible in a film that had been withheld from the public. I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea who took the film. I had no idea where this film was. But I began searching for anything that had been taken on that day in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas, that would show me or confirm that what I had seen in these documents was true or false. I didn't care. I was looking for what happened. For like everyone else, the assassination of John F. Kennedy changed my life. And I, like most of you, have never recovered from the emotional trauma that we all experienced on that day.